about detachment. And detachment is about being detached from unholy things and being attached to God and to the things of God, right? Detachment isn't about not having desire for anything. In some religions, that's what they promote. If you don't have desire for anything, then you will not suffer. In Christianity, it's about ordering our desire to the right thing. See, the reality is that every one of us desires and longs for God. St. Augustine said our hearts are restless till they rest in Him. If we're not resting in Him, if we're not properly attached to God, then we will get attached to counterfeits. We'll try to feed this restlessness with one thing after another. We may try to feed it with unholy things such as pornography, drugs, alcohol, pride, anger, envy, judgment, jealousy. Or we may even try to feed this restlessness with good and holy things. The rosary, doing good and holy works, growing in virtue, things of that nature, right? We can try to stave off the restlessness in many, many different ways. But the reality is the way we become detached from counterfeits is to become attached to God. See, He is the fulfillment of all desire. Every desire and longing of the human heart finds fulfillment in God, because we are made to be totally espoused to God. We have a God-sized hole in each one of us that we had at the fall, that we received at the fall. And what we're trying to do is relate and be with God in such a way that He fills us completely, that this hole that we have in our souls gets filled with Him and His presence completely, so that our hearts and our total being are saturated in love, right? So saturated we drip with grace. The image that comes to mind is a sponge, right? A sponge has all those little holes in it, which is exactly where all the water gets sucked up into. And then when there's too much in there, it'll just kind of run out of the sponge. And that's what a saint is they're a person who's become divinized. They become so attached to God that they're just dripping grace. They're dripping the Spirit everywhere they go, right? And this is the key to attachment, becoming attached to Him. The way we become attached to God is by experiencing His love, right? When we experience His love over here, we will look at the dark over there, we'll look at the dark when we see this light, and we'll say, yeah, I don't want that, I want this. Because when the light comes close, then the counterfeits are exposed. Then we can turn away from them. But the real hard work of detachment and of attachment to God is this distress that comes when we see the counterfeit and we see Him over here. And now we have to turn from there to here and turn fully and walk towards this. That's where the rub of detachment comes. And what that means is we have to deal with the rub, we have to deal with the unrest in our hearts, right? We have to deal with this bare naked desire that we have. When we expose that bare naked desire to Him, He wants nothing more than to enter in, right? Think of a husband whose wife exposes herself, right? At the time of the marital act. He wants nothing more than to enter in and experience the depths of intimacy with his bride. Well, when we open our hearts in this way to Him, He wants nothing more than to enter in and experience the depth of intimacy with us. So detachment is about laying bare our heart, bringing those things to Him and allowing Him to meet us in those needs and in those desires. And the thing that happens is when we do that, we no longer want this, right? This is the key for addictions. This is the key for getting healed of addictions. It's what's the movement in your heart? What's the distress? What's the desire in your heart right before the behavior or the thought to engage in your addiction, whatever that is? That's the very movement that needs to be brought to God. And so detachment occurs as we become more attached to God, as He begins to fulfill our desire.